Mic check 1 2 1 2. Yes, you'll hear an echo. I got a new streaming setup, so I've got some audio effects on here. That's with a bit of reverb and delay. And this is as normal. So let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. Shout out to everybody locked in. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, sounds quality. Yeah, so we're going to talk about a number of things today. We're going to talk about the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul farce at the weigh-in, the fake slap. We're going to talk about Ramirez versus CBS. We're going to talk about Tyson Fury's shape for this upcoming Usyk fight, the rematch. We're going to talk about Kabayel pulling out of the Martin Bakole final eliminator with the IBF and Billy Nelson's reaction to that. We're going to talk about Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez apparently being in negotiations to fight. We're going to talk about Oliver McCall. Yes, Oliver McCall, the Atomic Bull, former WBC World Heavyweight Champion, Mike Tyson's sparring partner, famously knocked out Lennox Lewis. He is making a comeback, folks. These old guys are, they're all trying to do it now. So yeah, that's what's on the agenda tonight. But first and foremost, could you guys do me a favor and stick a like on this stream? It really helps the stream get seen. It helps with visibility. We've got 130, 155 concurrent viewers. So if you guys could just kindly help me out and stick a like on this stream, it'd really help. I like to try and keep the like to viewer ratio at around at least 50%. So we need about 70 likes, or 75, excuse me, just over 75 likes. So if we can get the likes up, then we will proceed with this live stream. We'll get into it. We'll get into the slap, which I think is fake, because Mike Tyson has been in the WWE. Yeah. Mike Tyson has been in the WWE several times, and they teach you how to punch and slap so that you don't do any real damage. So of course, Mike Tyson, if it was a fake slap with Jake Paul, he would need some excuse, right, to sell it. Oh, Jake Paul stepped on his foot. And Tyson did the weakest slap I've ever seen in my life. He literally tried to slap with the base of his palm, you know, near the wrist. And that is not going to be an impactful, stinging slap when you do it with that part of your hand. You need to get the fingers involved properly. It was, to me, a WWE slap. That's the kind of slaps you see in the WWE. And I've seen Mike Tyson genuinely angry many times. Yeah, I watched his career from the 1980s through the 90s, the early 2000s. So I've seen this guy go off. I know what he looks like when he's genuinely angry. In my opinion, he was acting. Now, that doesn't mean the fight's going to be fake, necessarily. Yeah, there are plenty of real fights where, again, they get in the ring and they trade real punches and they do real damage. But the pre-fight antics sometimes are still staged, right? To sell more pay-per-views, whatever. Netflix are doing some type of offer now where they've got a lower tier subscription package where you can sign up for like, what is it, £6 in the UK or something like that. So it's effectively like pay-per-view, but you're obviously paying for a Netflix subscription. Shout out to Boxing Media TV for the super chat. He says, long-time subscriber. I'm 18 now, been subscribed to you since I was 14. Would you consider doing a Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series for your old sparring sessions? Love, bro, Lewis. A Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer. Well, my sparring sessions really weren't as interesting as Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer, because that was dealing with drunk people and people on all kinds of substances and all that. Sparring sessions are just sparring sessions. But I guess I could talk about, you know, a few of the sparring sessions I've had over the years. Some of the more colorful sparring sessions. People tend to like to hear the sessions where I got beaten up. That seems to be the agenda of my subscribers. They want to hear about when I got beaten up in sparring. And I want to say I never really got badly beaten up, but you know, you take your licks. But shout out to Boxing Media TV. Hold tight for that. Yes, folks, can we get the likes up to at least let's say 80. We're on 175 now. We can get 20 more likes and we will continue. We'll get into all the boxing chat tonight. It only takes a split second just to like the live stream. So this stream can get seen. It helps with the visibility and so on and so forth. So I appreciate you guys. If you can just stick a like on there, then we can proceed. And in the meantime, how about this? I'm going to talk with the effects on until we reach 80 likes. Oh, we're nearly at 80 likes anyway. 82 likes. But I do like the effects. How about this? If I talk close like this, I can sound like a Jamaican dancehall artist.
Labyrinth, come in.
Oh, I predict an earthquake up in here. 'Cause we drop bombs on it. Bombs on it. Smash something. Mush for me. Hey, yeah.
Labyrinth, come in.
Somebody sounded like a Pakistani imam. I guess they use the effects, right? Anyway. Yeah, a lot of people are insisting that this slap was genuine. I completely disagree. I think it was a fake slap. I think it was WWE stuff that Mike Tyson learned when he was in the WWE, how to slap and not really have an impact, because nobody could argue that that slap was weak as hell. It's Mike Tyson we're talking about. If Mike Tyson was, genuinely angry, then how on earth could he throw such a weak slap as that if he was genuinely angry? Again, see Mike Tyson genuinely angry many times throughout his career. So, not sure what that's about. Well, I think it's a fake slap. Anyway, let's get into today's boxing chat. I've already spoken about the fake slap. That's my view. As I said earlier on, there are many real fights where they actually trade blows and do real damage in the ring, but the pre-fight antics are scripted or staged to some extent. I mean, Tyson Fury actually spoke about this earlier on in his career, where he was asked, and Derek Chisora did too, where they say they were asked by promoters to do stuff before the fight, flip a table or whatever, because it helps sell pay-per-views. Have a bit of argy-bargy. In fact, do you guys remember the beef between Ricardo Mayorga and Shane Mosley? When Ricardo Mayorga touched Shane Mosley's woman or something? Didn't that turn out to be, didn't they admit afterwards that was all staged? So there's plenty of staged pre-fight antics in boxing. Yeah? Because there's a financial incentive there. People want to make more money. So it's hardly surprising that this type of stuff goes on. Gavin Hastings says it was a fast reaction, though. He didn't build up the slap. That's why I think it was premeditated. Because he knew what he was going to do. As soon as he got close to him, he's like, okay, this is where I slap him. He steps on my foot. That's the cue. I slap him. With a little WWE thing. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. Says the Tyson fanboys online at the moment are mental. They're always mental. As long as I've been doing YouTube, the Mike Tyson fanboys, and look, just to be clear, Mike Tyson is my favorite heavyweight of all time. I don't think he's the greatest heavyweight of all time, but he's my favorite heavyweight of all time because he was always exciting. It was always value for money with Mike Tyson. You couldn't go wrong with a Mike Tyson fight. Obviously, he blew a lot of people out in the first round, but as I say, he was value for money. He was exciting. He was dynamic, hyper aggressive, and he had a do or die mentality. So I've always liked watching Mike Tyson. But yeah, he has a cultish, hardcore following who are kind of weird and creepy. Do you know what I mean? They get obsessed with this guy to the point where they think they know him, you know? I don't want to talk too much about them, but yeah, shout out to Matt for the super chat. Shout out to Mike Boddington. Good evening. Hope you are well, sir. I'm very well. And how are you, Squire? I'm doing fantastic over here. BG London said, Shane Mosley's wife was a terrible actor. Yeah, but you guys remember that was fake, wasn't it? The Mosley Mayorga wife thing. It was all fake. Yeah, that's what I think the Mike Tyson thing was. Just some pre-fight fakery to help get a few more Netflix signups. Anyway, let's talk about the actual card here. So that's the fight itself. You can see there on BoxRec. Then here we've got the undercard. Let me just make this big because my old eyes can't see too well here. So undercard, we've got Mario Barrios. He's a WBC welterweight champion, taking on Abel Ramos. I'm not sure whether I've seen Ramos fight, but on paper, this looks like a relatively straightforward affair. Obviously, there's such a thing as upsets in boxing, but again, on paper, it looks like a relatively straightforward affair. You got Katie Taylor Serrano too. Not the strongest card in the world. And then, of course, top of the bill, Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. And last I checked, you guys correct me if I'm off here, but last I checked, wasn't Jake Paul the favorite in this fight? I think he's a slight favorite. Is that right, guys, in the chat? Is Jake Paul a slight favorite? Or is he a sizable favorite? Okay, Tyson's a favorite. Jake Paul's a favorite. And, that's one of the things that makes me think it probably won't be scripted because, the bookies surely would know because they got their spies everywhere. And if they're getting everybody to... But then again, I don't know. I mean, maybe Tyson is the one who's supposed to go down because I would have assumed, maybe I'd be wrong, that if it was going to be scripted, it would be scripted in favor of Mike Tyson, so he would win. But maybe not, Maybe it's a big betting scam where Jake Paul's supposed to win. I don't know. But in my view, I suspect it's not a scripted fight. I suspect it is real. I'm not discounting the possibility that it could be scripted WWE nonsense, but I suspect it will be a real fight. That's what I suspect. They've got the 2-minute rounds, the 14-ounce gloves. They put provisions in place. And Jake Paul, although he is technically a professional boxer, he's a YouTuber. He's a complete novice. So it's a very unique and unusual situation. They're putting a novice professional in against a 58-year-old former great heavyweight. It's a weird one, right? That's why I say this is a circus fight. So that's the undercard anyway. Nothing particularly spectacular, unless you're really a fan of Taylor Serrano. Let's move on. We got tomorrow evening, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez taking on Chris Billam-Smith. This is a much better fight and a much better show, all right? This is quite interesting here. So top of the bill, I think Gilberto Ramirez is the favorite over Chris Billam-Smith. And I can see why. I think Gilberto Ramirez does have kind of underrated boxing skills. He is a bit slow, even though he's coming up from super middleweight originally. Then he went up to light heavyweight, lost to Bivol. Now he's moved up to cruiserweight and he's won the championship against Gulameri, and he obviously beat Joe Smith Jr. as well, but he was moving up from light heavyweight too. And yeah, even though he's technically a smaller guy moving up, he's still quite slow, isn't he, Zurdo Ramirez, in terms of hand speed, foot speed, and what have you. And I say moving up, he was always a big guy. I heard that when he was at 175, he was walking around well over 200 pounds. So he's always been a big guy. But yeah, he's still ponderous these days, but he's got pretty good technique. He's working with Malik Scott, who's maybe one of his assistant coaches. I'm not sure if Malik Scott is his main coach. And Malik Scott, say what you want to say about him, he was a slick fighter. He did have, decent boxing skills and whatever. So he's been working with Zurdo to make him slicker and maybe a bit quicker and so on. So I think it's an intriguing fight. I think if Zurdo Ramirez wasn't so slow, I would probably confidently pick him over CBS. But because there's that speed issue for Zurdo, I think Chris Smith is definitely in with a realistic chance of winning this fight. So I don't know. I understand why Zurdo is the favorite, but I see it almost as a 50-50, to be honest with you. I see it almost as a 50-50. What do you guys think about this fight? Goozy says, I can't get past Zurdo's padded record. Does he have a padded record? He doesn't have the greatest record in the world, but I don't know. Is padded? All right, nobody interested in Chris Smith Zurdo, I see in the chat. Mr. Lucas says, should AJ and Wilder fight in March, Hatman? I think if both guys insist on carrying on, and my view is they should both retire. If they insist on carrying on, then I think fighting each other is the way to go. Yeah. Graham McKelvey says, Zurdo by 6-round KO. Okay. Somebody going for Zurdo by stoppage there. Personally, I think it's probably a distance fight. Unless somebody gets cut, I'm expecting Zurdo versus CBS to go the distance. Arch Enemy says Zurdo has better footwork. I completely agree with that. Zurdo does have the better footwork. He's got, Zurdo is a tidy boxer, He's good technically. It's just that he's not the fastest guy in the world. He can be a bit cumbersome at times. But his technique is pretty good. I would say he's more polished than Chris Smith, for sure. Grind says, Hatman, should Tank move up to 140? I think so, yes. Yeah. But whether he will, he's a stubborn guy. He's done very well financially, maneuvering the way that he has in his career, using the Mayweather method, which is a way of basically trying to make out, using PR, that you are the man, that you're unstoppable, and so on. But in actuality, you are only keeping hold of a belt at a time, usually the WBC, because they give you carte blanche. You're swerving lots of people while claiming that they're swerving you. You're staying in your comfort zone for the most part. And if you do fight somebody outside your comfort zone, you're draining them with catch weights. Tank has been doing that for years. So why would he change now? If he's been so successful financially, which is what he cares about really, and he cares about the PR too, right? But the main objective is to make as much money as possible. It's prize fighting at the end of the day, so I get it to some extent, but it doesn't really make you the biggest or the most popular fighter, should I say, in terms of the fans. As long as people are talking about you, then you're going to make money, because people will buy pay-per-views to watch someone get knocked out. That's Mayweather's whole gig, actually, back in the days, is he used to fight Latinos on Mexican holidays, Latino holidays, and be as antagonistic as possible. And the majority of people that bought his pay-per-views were people that wanted to see him get knocked out. Obviously, he had his supporters, but they were, in my estimation anyway, in the minority, at least in the United States. So Tank has kind of gone down that route to some extent. He's courted controversy and he's tried to antagonize certain sections of the boxing community in order to, as I say, keep up the Mayweather method. BG London says Eddie said he will fight Oscar. Yeah, I saw that. Eddie was kind of being sarcastic, but then acting like he wasn't being sarcastic, but then he, you know. Okay, we got a very naive person here saying, fake slap, laughing my ass off. You can literally see. You must have been born yesterday. That's all I can tell you. You who think, oh, it's definitely a real, you must have been born. Yes, that was the weakest slap I've ever seen. Jake, his head snapped to the side. It was the weakest WWE rehearsed slap I've ever seen. Those are the kind of slaps they deliver in the WWE. Mike Tyson was in the WWE several times. He knows. They teach you, they train you when you go in the WWE how to slap without delivering a lot of damage. And that's what that was. You use the base of the palm. Yeah? And that's what, he didn't even make a big sound when he slapped him. It was the weakest slap ever. I've seen plenty of hard slaps in boxing, and that was not one of them. Mike Tyson, when he genuinely loses his temper, is a dangerous man, even now at 58. I've seen him go off when he was at the press conference for the Lewis fight. Bit Lewis's leg. It took like 10 guys to jump on top of Tyson. Obviously, this was a long time ago, but still. I mean, this guy punched up somebody on a flight not too long ago. I've seen Mike Tyson get busy, for real, for real. And that was not for real, for real. That was some joke business to get a few more Netflix signups before tonight. That's what that was, in my view. So, you know, maybe you ain't seen too many fake slaps. Maybe you ain't been watching boxing for that long. It's amazing how many people are buying that slap. Trollmaster Mike says the slap was real. Now the slap was weak. If he was going to slap him properly, why wouldn't he give him a proper hard slap instead of that weak slap? I mean, Jake Paul was smiling. If it was a proper slap, it would have stung. And Jake Paul would have, you know, reacted differently. It was like the weakest slap ever. It was so weak that they're even saying, right, online, that Mike Tyson's in trouble. If he can't even hurt Jake Paul with that slap, then what chance has he got in the fight? Now, that's not my viewpoint, but I'm just saying the slap was some joke business. Just typical boxing theatrics. I'm not going to repeat what Choice Adrian said. But yeah, I think it was just, you know, typical boxing theatrics to get a few more signups. That's my view. Mindsmith agrees. He says, my immediate impression was that the slap was fake as hell. I mean, why is it such a big deal for there to be a fake slap in boxing? Why do people find a fake slap in boxing so hard to believe? There's loads of fake, you know, press conference stuff in boxing, contrived, scripted press conference stuff but it happens all the time. People want to sell extra tickets and signups. I mean, it's not anything outrageous to suggest that there was something staged before a fight. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's normal in boxing. Anyway, let's move on from, I mean, maybe there's a lot of Mike Tyson fanboys. That's what it is. The Mike Tyson fanboys don't want to believe. In fact, let me address this, right? Shout out to Ben for the super chat. He says Fury fighting at 280. I think that's the right move. I'm going to come on to that in a second, but there was somebody who commented on one of the videos I did about Mike Tyson. It was the one where I was asking whether the fight was going to be real or staged. And there was a guy who I think was American in the comments, and he said, surely it can't be a staged fight. It can't be a scripted fight because Mike Tyson would never disrespect Cus D'Amato's legacy like that. You see, this is what I was referring to when I spoke about the Mike Tyson fairy tale. You know, people believe in this fairy tale with Mike Tyson, like him and Customato had this incredible, you know, relationship where there was no rough moments between them, and it was just father and son, and they just idealize it and romanticize it because that's what they've done in so many Mike Tyson documentaries over the years. But if you hear Jose Torres, who was also a Customato fighter, you hear Jose Torres talk about the relationship between Mike Tyson and Customato. Customato got to the point where he was going to wash his hands of Mike Tyson on several occasions because Mike Tyson was so disruptive. And as far as Mike Tyson, you know, not wanting to do something that Customato would be, you know, ashamed of him doing, or, you know, looking down on him, feeling disappointed, looking down from heaven. If Mike Tyson cared about all that stuff, then how come this guy's done every narcotic on the planet? You think Customato would approve of that? How come this guy surrounded himself with all sorts of lowlifes and gangsters and killers and all that? Customato hated gangsters. If you know anything about Customato's life, he hated gangsters. He grew up literally, you know, around the mob in the Bronx, and he hated the mob. Obviously, D'Amato was Italian-American himself. He hated the mob. He hated gangsters. And the mob stole at least one of his fighters off him. And for years afterwards, D'Amato was like paranoid. You know, he would go to his house and he would check under the bed and under his car for like explosive devices and so on. Yeah. D'Amato hated like the criminal underworld and all that. He hated them kind of guys. You think he would have been happy about Mike Tyson surrounding himself with gangsters and killers? And because that's what Tyson surrounded himself with for years. Okay? Doing every narcotic under the sun. Getting involved in all sorts of street altercations. Being, you know, one of the things, just to give you an insight into the kind of guy Customato was, he wanted Mike Tyson to basically be stoic. That's the image that he had in his mind for how he wanted Mike Tyson to be. He wanted him to be this stoic guy who doesn't even celebrate after he scores a knockout. He wanted him to wear suits and, you know, be able to do endorsements for respectable companies, almost like a Joe Louis type image. Although, you know, Joe Louis in the public eye, but in the ring, a Sonny Liston, you know, as far as fighting, a Sonny Liston, surly and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Mike Tyson has done like a gazillion things that Customato wouldn't have approved of. Getting involved in WWE and doing all that fakery. Biting Holyfield's ear, right? A chunk out of his ear. Saying all the stuff he said to reporters. Remember when he did that interview with the woman? And he said, I don't do interviews with women unless, you know, you want to. You think D'Amato would approve of that? See, these Tyson fanboys are just so detached from reality. Mike Tyson's whole career, pretty much post Jacobs Caton, was just absolutely awash with stuff that Customato wouldn't have approved of, would have strongly been against in terms of Mike Tyson's behavior in and out of the ring. So all this stuff about, oh, he would never do something. You know, again, WWE, the biting, trying to break people's arms in the ring, all this trashy stuff he's been involved in. And even now, right? He sells his edibles and the sticky green and all that. Well, you think D'Amato would be okay with that? Come on, people. The romanticization that Tyson fanboys put on him is unreal. It's at the level where they're just completely, as I say, out of touch with reality of who Mike Tyson actually is. So all that, you know, not wanting to disappoint Customato, we're way past that, folks. We're decades past that. Mike Tyson don't care about none of that. I'm not saying he didn't love Customato, but, you know, there are plenty of kids out there that love their parents, but they still will do loads of stuff to disappoint the parents. That's a fact, you know? So, if we're talking about morally, would Mike Tyson do something fake? I don't think he would like be involved in a fake boxing match ideally, he wouldn't want to. But if he's got issues with the IRS, as some people claim, maybe he would. You know what I mean? Mike Tyson doesn't have the highest amount of dignity. So, you know, I mean, some of the kind of goofy things that Mike Tyson's done over the years, you know, some of the movie stuff, that skit that he did with Bobby Brown, when he dressed up as a bumblebee, you know, he's done a bunch of stuff. It's like, how can the baddest man on the planet be reduced to this? You know, so he doesn't have the highest amount of dignity in the world. So again, I suspect that this Jake Paul fight will be real. I think the slap was fake. That was just typical boxing stuff. But I think the fight itself probably will be real, but you know, I could be wrong. Shout out to Black Dynamite for the super chat. He says, yo, Hatman, what's your thoughts on these young upcoming prospects in Floyd Schofield, Keyshawn Davis, Abdullah Mason? Any of them a threat to Tank? Definitely not yet. And I'm not familiar enough with all three of them. Apart from, I'm most familiar with Keyshawn Davis. I've seen all three of them. I've seen Floyd Schofield and I've seen Abdullah Mason. Is Mason the one who looks a spitting image of Tank Davis? One of them looks exactly like Tank Davis. I don't think it's Schofield, is it? I swear it's Abdullah Mason. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. Who's the one that looks exactly like Tank Davis? I mean, spitting image. Oh, okay, my bad. It's neither of them. It's Kamel Moten. There's me getting my American boxing prospects mixed up. Yeah, I'm familiar with him. It's uncanny, isn't it? The way he looks exactly like Tank Davis. Except he's an orthodox, whereas Davis is a southpaw. That looks exactly like him. Surely he's not from Baltimore as well. But yeah, Keyshawn Davis, he's the one that's got the rivalry with the Cuban, right? Eddie Hearn's guy, Cruz. So I've seen Davis a few times. Abdullah Mason and Floyd Schofield, I've definitely seen both of them as well. But, you know, truth be told, I'm not as familiar with them as maybe I'll become. A shout out to Black Dynamite each and every time. Yeah, Andy Cruz. I mean, Andy Cruz must have heard the pillow fist criticism because he's been trying to put more meat on his punches. Certainly on the fight, or in the fight he had on the LA card, he was noticeably trying to put more meat on his punches. And yeah, you know, prior to that, his punches were a bit vegan. Watch the vegans get at me now. It's just a metaphor, man. Vegan punches are weak punches, isn't it? Yeah. Vegan punches are punches that don't have any meat on them. You need to put some meat on them punches. Throwing vegan jabs and vegan right hands. Put some meat on them punches. All right. Let's move on to the next talking point here. So we were talking about the, where are we at? The Ramirez CBS card. So on there, and it's a much better card than the card this evening. On that card, you've got William Zepeda taking on Tevin Farmer. That's an interesting fight. That's a 10-rounder. And you've got Jose Ramirez taking on Arnold Barboza. That's a real good fight. Definitely looking forward to that one. That's a 10-rounder as well. And a couple of others on there. And again, the main event, I like the fight. It's going to be interesting. Definitely worth watching. This is the first non-pay-per-view card that DAZN have put on in a while that's really been worth watching. Hopefully there's more to come since they've, done this deal with Frank Warren. Okay, so let's talk about Tyson Fury. Now, I want to shout out to G-Man. He is in the chat because I saw his video. I think he uploaded it yesterday, where he was pointing out that Tyson Fury still looks heavy. Shout out to James Wood, by the way. Big up James Wood every time. Iron Mike slapping around like a Bapkin. Big up the Sheffield crew. Man like James Wood. The Alexander Usyk of kitchen fitters. That's James Wood. In case you don't know him, make sure you check him out. Check out his business. Huh? If you're in the Sheffield area. You probably don't want me bigging up his business now. He's got so much work on. But yeah, check out his business. James Wood is the Alexander Usyk of kitchen fitters. Seriously. Wood solid Yorkshireman. Although I liked him better when he had the Paul Sykes moustache. I think he got rid of the Paul Sykes moustache. Why did you get rid of the Paul Sykes moustache, James? That was like an epic moustache. So yeah, big up G-Man. Let's talk about Tyson Fury's shape. So he posted this video the other day, and you know, G-Man was saying in his video, is this indicative of Tyson Fury maybe not gonna go ahead with the fight, or struggling with motivation, or maybe it's a strategic thing where he wants to come in heavier? And why is he training in Malta? This is another thing that G-Man was asking in his video, because he's apparently in Malta doing training camp. And so G-Man was saying, well, maybe it's to prepare for the heat in Saudi Arabia. Well, this is where I want to chime in, because actually Saudi Arabia is not that hot in December. Yeah, it's actually pretty mild generally in December in Saudi Arabia. It's like Saudi in December is probably like the UK in about late September. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. We'll just bring the graphic up on screen. So here we go. This is temperatures for Saudi, right? Average temperatures. And you can see the record high for each month. And then you've got the daily mean. Yeah? You've got the maximum daily mean, the daily mean, and then the minimum daily mean. All right? So basically, to get to the actual average, in December, Saudi is around 16 degrees Celsius. So it's not particularly hot. That's like, as I say, that's like Britain in late September, 16 degrees Celsius. Not particularly, it's a bit chilly actually. I lived out in the Middle East for several years. And in the wintertime, it actually gets a bit chilly. I mean, not cold like Britain, but it can get quite chilly. Yeah. I think the coldest it got down to when I was there was maybe 10 degrees in like December, January. It got that low, like 10, 11 degrees. It was quite chilly. And Tyson Fury, of course, has fought in Saudi in December. Wasn't the Francis Ngannou fight in December? So he knows it's not going to be that hot there. So again, it's kind of interesting that he's training in Malta. And, you know, I can't tell you why Tyson Fury is looking as heavy as he is, because he looks heavy. And I was saying this from maybe before they did the first press conference. I said, to me, Tyson Fury looks heavy. He looks way heavier than he was for their first fight. And, you know, maybe it's a strategic thing. Maybe he feels like he needs to, maybe he feels like he overtrained for the first fight, because there was this notion that Tyson Fury didn't train hard enough. I mean, are you having a laugh? This is a guy who loves his food, who always blows up between fights. For him to get down to his lowest weight for 5 years means that he trained himself into the damn ground. So there was never a danger of him undertrain. He certainly didn't undertrain. Is it possible he overtrained for the first fight? Maybe. And maybe that's what he's thinking. I overdid it. I lost too much weight. Maybe I was a bit too weak. I need to come in heavy and strong, similar to how he was in the second Deontay Wilder fight. Maybe that's his approach this time. Or maybe, as other people have wondered, I'm not saying that they're predicting this, but I think G-Man did mention it, is Tyson Fury actually going to go ahead with the fight? I don't know. I'm not saying he won't go ahead with it, but you can't put anything past this guy. With a track record that he has, and with the lack of respect, lack of regard for the truth that he has, you can't put anything past him. Yeah, it would not shock me for Tyson Fury to pull out and fight somebody else, fight AJ or whatever. Now, I think that it would have been more likely for Tyson Fury to fight out, to pull out and fight AJ if AJ had actually beat Dubois. I think that's what Tyson Fury was looking for. He was looking for AJ to maybe take some damage against Dubois, get beaten up, maybe have to come up off the floor, but ultimately win the fight so then Tyson Fury could go ahead and fight him. I think that probably, that would have been more likely had Anthony Joshua won. But since Anthony Joshua lost, I think Tyson Fury's thinking, well, what do I really gain from fighting AJ at this point? Maybe I'm better off going for the Usyk rematch. That's what I suspect. So, but who knows? You know, Tyson Fury is such an erratic character. He probably finds it hard to predict his own behavior, you know, from one day to the next. He probably feels quite different from one day to the next. So, yeah. What do you guys think about Tyson Fury's weight? Because to me, it was kind of surprising that there were people after the press conference saying that Tyson Fury looked svelte and light. And they were saying that Usyk actually looked heavy. I mean, Specsavers all round. Because to me, Tyson Fury clearly looked heavy and Usyk looked his normal self. What do you guys think? James Wood says regarding his mustache, because I looked like I belonged on a live stream for pedo hunters. Now you didn't have the trench coat for that. You had the mustache. See, there was loads of like northern hard men, tough guys in the 80s that had big thick mustaches. You know, in the days of like Graham Souness and people like that, mustache was like a manly thing in Britain. Yeah, what happened to the strong mustaches? Nowadays, beards are trendy, you know? Beard gang, everyone's got this super groomed beard with oil and all sorts of other products they put in it. What happened to the good old-fashioned mustache? You know, Magnum PI. Todd Francis says, I was surprised at how mobile Fury actually was in a Usyk fight. Yeah, he was more mobile in that fight than he's been for a number of years. And that's because he came in so light. That's the lightest he's been for 5 years. Somebody says the Ron Jeremy Tash. Yeah, Ron Jeremy's a wrong one. Anyway, let's move on from the Gypsy King Tyson Fury. And let's talk about this disappointing bit of news, particularly disappointing for Team Bakole, Billy Nelson. Ajit Kabayel, according to Billy Nelson on X, formerly Twitter, Ajit Kabayel pulled out of the purse bid, which was yesterday, Thursday. Now, Ajit Kabayel, to my knowledge, isn't promoted by Frank Warren, okay? But I'm struggling to think of anyone who would benefit from Ajit Kabayel pulling out on the day of the purse bid other than Team Dubois. Now, stick with me here, people, because you might not see the connection immediately. Ajit Kabayel, I think, has a German promoter, right? So if you didn't want to fight Martin Bakole, why would you leave it until the day of the purse bid? Why wouldn't you pull out prior? Leaving it to the day of the purse bid, you're going to make an enemy of, in this case, Ben Shalom, Sky, Martin Bakole, and you're going to make yourself look bad by way of PR unless you've got a better fight that you're going to take instead. But even in that case, why would you leave it up until the day of the purse bid to pull out? Why not pull out earlier? What, is it just a coincidence that you got the deal done for the other fight on the day of the purse bid? I find that hard to believe. Here's my theory, and it's just a theory. I've got no inside knowledge. I'm not making any accusations. My theory is that Frank Warren, who we know doesn't like Ben Shalom, and Ben Shalom promotes Martin Bakole. Frank Warren, even though I'm not sure whether this actually happened to Frank Warren, but it certainly happened to Eddie Hearn. It might have happened to Frank Warren too, where Ben Shalom pulled several of his fighters out of purse bids on the day of the bid. So my theory is that Frank Warren is giving Ben Shalom a taste of his own medicine. And what he's actually gone and done is made Daniel Dubois versus Ajit Kabayel. Now, again, that's my theory. On one hand, you get to spite Ben Shalom, right? Because this is what promoters do when they don't like each other. They spite each other in different ways. So mess Ben Shalom about, make him think that Bakole is going to get the Kabayel fight. Then bam, get Kabayel to pull out and sign for the Dubois fight, on the day of the purse bid. Yeah. And number two, it actually sets Martin Bakole back and gives Daniel Dubois more time before he has to face Bakole. Because now the IBF have to look for the next challenger to face Martin Bakole in a final eliminator. Because this Kabayel fight was supposed to be done and dusted by now, right? The purse bid was supposed to be yesterday. So they should have had, the winner of the bid would have been known, and then they would have very shortly announced where the fight was going to take place, so on and so forth, and the date. But now they need to find another person to fight Martin Bakole. Then there's going to be another period of negotiations, which will be at least a month, and then a purse bid after that. So if, as Martin Bakole and Billy Nelson claim, Daniel Dubois and his team are not keen on the Bakole fight, well, this is a way of kicking that can down the road, isn't it? Waiting until the purse bid to do Daniel Dubois versus Kabayel. So that's my theory. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my reading of the situation, because it just seems weird, for a guy like Kabayel who is on a good run, but isn't a star, and last I checked wasn't with a big promoter. It's very odd for him to pull out on a day of a purse bid like that. Unless he's got a better opportunity. And the only better opportunity I can think of, because I think he's ranked, he's the highest ranked contender with the IBF. So the only better opportunity surely would be a title shot. No? Unless he's going to, fight Anthony Joshua or something. Is that possible? Fight Deontay Wilder? We'll see. Time will tell, time will reveal. But Billy Nelson hasn't been interviewed since Kabayel pulled out the purse bid, but prior to the purse bid, he bet Frank Warren 200 grand. He wasn't in the presence of Frank Warren when he did this, but he challenged Frank Warren to a £200,000 bet that Dubois will beat Martin Bakole. And he thinks that Dubois would rather vacate his belt than face Martin Bakole in the ring. Billy Nelson's definitely no shrinking violet when it comes to promoting his guy, and he's always been like that. But what do you guys think about it? Do you think Daniel Dubois is shook, scared to death, scared to look of Martin Bakole? Or do you think that he's as confident as anyone in the world right now after the run he's been on? Because he's conquered so many of his demons. Would he really be scared of this particular demon in Martin Bakole because he got bashed up by him in sparring back in the days? He got bashed up by Hrgovic in sparring back in the days too, but he overcame him. Would Martin Bakole be any different in terms of the level of intimidation that would be there for Daniel Dubois? You guys let me know what you think. Okay, Brandon Herrera says AJ did repost a picture of himself and Kabayel that Kabayel posted about a week ago. Okay, interesting. No, I'm not saying my theory is going to turn out to be true. It's just a theory. As I say, I can't understand why Kabayel would pull out on the day of the purse bid unless he's got something better lined up. And the AJ fight obviously would be something a lot better. A simple guy says, Hatman, is there any update on the BoxRec WBA? No, the WBA are still not recognized by BoxRec, which is very strange and very disappointing. I don't think they should let their beef with the WBA interfere with their function as a website. They're supposed to be boxing's official record keeper. How can you market yourself as boxing's official record keeper when the WBA, which to my knowledge is the oldest existing sanctioning body, is completely absent from all your records? That's ridiculous. Now you got to go to Wikipedia to find records of WBA bouts. Obviously, you can go to the WBA website, but they don't have records of fights as extensive as BoxRec do. So you got to go Wikipedia now to look up WBA sanctioned title fights. And that's not as efficient as BoxRec, obviously. So, yeah, that's where we're at with BoxRec. Valaga says Dubois is confident he is not afraid. Okay. There's somebody there who's not buying Billy Nelson's narrative. Ocean Blue says off topic, but Bob Marley or Jimmy Cliff? I gotta go with Bob Marley just because of the number of classics he's got. But Jimmy Cliff, you know, he was definitely a great artist. Many rivers to cross. The harder they come. Pause. James Wood says, I think Dubois lost his V. He's too dumb to be scared. Actually, there might be some truth to that. Hang on, let me turn this echo down. Yeah, maybe he's too dumb to be scared. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's too dumb to be scared. Yeah, there might be something in that. Because there's lots of like sayings and claims that the more intelligent a person is, generally, the more anxious they are. Because, you know, if you're a deep thinker, you're thinking about all of the bad things that could happen and you're overanalyzing. If you're more of a simple person who's not that deep, then once someone gets you into a confident mind frame, maybe it's difficult to knock you out of that confident mind frame because you don't think about much. Maybe that's what it is with Dubois, you know? Black Dynamite says Triple D is definitely a passport bro. Goozy says Bakole definitely more intimidating than AJ. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Ayed says, did you see Shane McGuigan's interview about Malik Scott? No, I didn't. Fill me in. What happened in the interview? What was said? Controversy? What are they saying? Henry Smith says Fury pulled out. No, he didn't. Tyson Fury injured. Now, you got to be trolling me. You've got to be trolling me. If that was true, I'd have to change the name of this stream immediately. Henry Smith says hurt his ankle. Mm-hmm. There's other people saying it. Really? Oh my God. You guys have got to be trolling me. You guys have got to be trolling me. Please tell me these guys are trolling. Let me check. let me use what if this is for real. I'm going to use one of my other little effects now. If Tyson Fury is pulled out, then he is a complete house. He's a complete house. You hear me? An absolute house. I'm pulled out. Nah, let me look it up now. Let me look it up now. I don't even want to believe it. I don't even want to believe it. Yeah, I'm not seeing nothing here. I'm not seeing nothing. I'm not seeing no headlines here, people. If you guys ain't trolling me, drop a link in the chat. This has got to be trolling. Yeah, these guys are trolling. Yeah, I suspected. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people love the trolling. But you know, with Tyson, see, the thing is with Tyson Fury, you can never put it past the guy. He's such a dishonest person. He's so dishonest. All right, give me a sec. It's gonna get another drink. Not an alcoholic one. I'm drinking electrolyte water. Yeah, very exciting. All right. Where was I? Yes, trolling me about Tyson Fury. Thanks for that, guys. James Wood drinking Carlin. Says he's on about his 16th one. One for each of Fury's kids. Fury and Paris do have a lot of kids. You know? Old school. Old school. I come from a family like that, you know? Where people stayed married for life, you know? All my aunties married in their 20s. And, well, the aunties on my dad's side, they're widows now because their husbands died a few years ago. But they're like in their 80s. And they were married from when they were in their 20s. And they had loads of kids with the husband. My dad, you know, my grandparents on my dad's side, they married and they had like, I think, eight or nine kids together, I think. So I come from one of them families. And my parents, my dad's got how many? He's been married twice, my dad. In total, he's got 9 of us. There's 9 of us in total from 2 marriages. Just to give you some completely uninteresting personal information. All right. There's Bakole and Kabayel on screen. What is Kabayel going to do? What's Martin Bakole going to do? Because this guy can't seem to catch a break, you know? He beat Jared Anderson, who was a Riyadh season ambassador or whatever. You think a big fight would come off the back of that? They were trying to set up Kabayel, who's done well on Riyadh season 2, but then he pulls out on the day of the purse bid. And if it ain't Kabayel going to fight AJ, then I think you might want to consider my theory that it's going to be Kabayel fighting Daniel Dubois. And that they didn't do the deal for that fight, or at least announced that they'd done the deal, to therefore pull Kabayel out the purse bid until the day of the purse bid in order to spite Ben Shalom. Because Frank Warren don't like him. That's my theory. And also, as I say, to give Daniel Dubois more time before he has to face Martin Bakole, because now they've got to find Bakole a new opponent. Then there's a whole month of negotiation, then a purse bid. It just kicks the Bakole can down the road. So Dubois don't have to fight him anytime soon. That's the theory. All right, let's move on. Devin Haney in negotiations to fight Teofimo Lopez. How do you guys feel about this? Devin Haney not a popular character. More so for stuff he does outside the ring rather than in it. But I guess the Lomachenko fight turned a lot of Lomachenko supporters against him. But I don't really understand that. It was a close fight. And even if it was a robbery, it wasn't. But even if it was a robbery, why blame the fighter? You know? The judges are the ones who do these things, not the fighter. I remember when Tim Bradley got that horrible decision over Pacquiao. And Bradley was getting death threats. I'm like, what kind of weirdos would send a guy death threats because the judges gave him an unjust decision? Like, it's not like Tim Bradley's the one who paid the judges off. I mean, like, come on. He's the fighter. Tim Bradley was always a tremendously brave man, you know, in the ring. And yeah, so I don't get that whole thing about if there's a decision you don't like, you attack the fighter. No. Your beef should be with the judges, or maybe with the promoter if they had any influence over the judges, not the fighter. Obviously, you take into account that you don't think the win was legit and the fighter shouldn't get credit for the win. I get that, but you don't attack the fighter for something that he's not responsible for. So anyway, I thought the Lomachenko fight was very close. Could have gone either way. You know, Devin Haney got it. No big deal as far as I'm concerned. Lomachenko, as fantastic a fighter as he's been over the years, he's a sore loser. Yeah, let's not forget that. After he lost to Teofimo Lopez, he was acting like he got robbed. Have we forgotten that? Huh? Not that Teofimo Lopez ain't a sore loser, because he is too. But, you know, him and his dad with the Kambosos fight, that was just bizarre. That was bizarre. The way they were carrying on with the Kambosos fight. Very, very bizarre. But anyway, yeah. Lomachenko's a sore loser. He's been a sore loser. So, yeah, Devin Haney versus Teofimo Lopez. I like the fight. Devin Haney has piled the pounds on. And he needs to get out of the victim energy that he's in right now. Suing Ryan Garcia and all this kind of stuff, and get back in, you know, get his game face back on and get serious if he's going to go in there against Teo and actually win the fight. Teo, as we've seen over the years, does have an issue with movers, and particularly if they have the reach to move and punch effectively. That's something that Lomachenko didn't have. Lomachenko is a very good mover, although he prefers to be aggressive. Lomachenko's really at his best on the front foot. But obviously he's got, you know, great movement. You know, he can move well, but he didn't have the reach to be able to capitalize on the movement, to be able to build an offense at long range off the movement against Teo. Teo just kept him on the end of a jab and a straight right hand for like the first 8 rounds or something. And then when Teo started slowing down, then Lomachenko was able to come back into it. So, yeah, against movers who have got reach, Teo, we've seen in the past, has had issues. Certainly against Sandor Martin, certainly against George Kambosos. Certainly against, who is that Latino fighter he fought recently? I forget the guy's name. Please remind me in the live chat. Shout out to Swaggins. He says, Loma was crying like a... Yeah, indeed, he was crying like a... Shout out to James Wood again for the super chat. Yeah, peace, James Wood. Big up every time. Chris Davis. Jermaine Ortiz. Thank you, Ocean Blue. Jermaine Ortiz. That's the guy I was thinking of. Teofimo Lopez had trouble with him too. He does blow hot and cold. But I do think that there's an issue there for Teo when it comes to movers. Yeah, guys who are a little bit slick, particularly southpaws, give him problems. So, somebody there said it's, where's it gone now? This guy says it's fake news. Lopez shut it down. He ain't fighting Haney. Okay. That's disappointing. Who is Lopez planning to fight then? Because Lopez is like very diva-ish, isn't he? He seems to be very, very difficult to deal with at the negotiating table. He's like Tank Davis in that way. You know, he wants the other side to jump through hoops of fire and swim through, you know, Olympic-sized swimming pools full of piranhas and jellyfish and man-eating sharks in order to get the fight with him. This guy acts like some type of entitled Instagram model. Huh? That's the way this guy is. The way he acts with other fighters trying to get fights with him, like other names trying to get fights with him, is the way that, like, what do they call them? Thoughts? His Instagram thoughts behave when all these simps are up in their DMs. They're like, yeah, fly me out here, spend 20 grand on Chanel or whatever. And then one day you might get a reply. Never mind a date. Teo is such a diva. And, you know, these guys like Teo, Tank Davis, they don't seem to care about the fact that they're wasting their prime years. Yeah? As far as they're concerned, they'll just fight mediocre opposition and get whatever, 80% of the money. And if they're going to fight a big name and someone that's seriously dangerous, well, they want, what, 50 million? Silly numbers. It's this diva mentality that has developed in United States boxing since Mayweather. Yeah, I'm going to put it on Mayweather. Since Mayweather. He has inspired these guys to be like this. And if I don't want to put it completely on Mayweather, well, the mastermind behind Mayweather was Al Heyman. He masterminded it all. Rex says, do you rate Tank? Yes, I do rate him. I think he's a fantastic fighter. I rated Mayweather too. Just because I rate them as fighters, you know, it don't mean I'm not going to call them out on their BS. And Mayweather participated in a lot of BS, perpetuated a lot of BS, and he's inspired a whole generation of new fighters to carry on with the same BS that he was on. The Mayweather effect, yes. So, yeah, Mayweather was really a bad influence. That's what I want to say. He was a bad influence. All right, let's move on to the next story then. Apparently, according to some, Haney, Teofimo Lopez in negotiations is fake news. They say that Lopez has shut it down on social media. How about this for car crash? So, Mike Tyson's fighting Jake Paul. Ike Ibeabuchi is apparently fighting in Nigeria sometime later on this year. And now Oliver McCall. Yes, Oliver McCall, former WBC heavyweight champion, knocked out Lennox Lewis, lost to Frank Bruno. beat Larry Holmes, an ancient version, knocked out Henry Akinwande, knocked out Bruce Seldon. In fact, did he knock him out or did he beat Seldon on points? I forget now. He definitely beat Bruce Seldon. I can't remember whether he stopped him. I think he might have done. Also beat Francesco Damiani, who was a very good Italian amateur, but as a pro, he was no great shakes. He was WBO heavyweight champion. That was when WBO wasn't recognized. Anyway, Oliver McCall beat him too. And of course, was famously a sparring partner for Mike Tyson, a prime Mike Tyson, for several years. He gave Mike some of his best work. So the story goes. McCall was known for having an iron jaw and being completely crazy because he had a problem with crack. This guy was a full-blown crackhead for most of his professional career, right? Through the 80s and 90s. And he basically had a crackhead breakdown in the Lennox Lewis rematch, where the man refused to throw any punches and he was clearly having some kind of, episode. And even though he was letting Lewis hit him, Lewis still couldn't hurt him. Oliver McCall had a tremendous chin. For me, he had the best chin in boxing during those years when he was participating in championship fights. Never went down. And it was just very, very tough. But crazy, limited, strong. He could punch very hard with the right hand. Anyway, apparently he's coming back. He's got a fight scheduled. You can see it right there on BoxRec. 19th of November. Against a guy called Stacey Fraser. This is the guy. Doesn't say his age. But his nickname is Bigfoot. He's 16 and 22. 16 wins, 15 by KO. So I'm sure he hasn't been fighting anyone good, but he has been knocking most of them out. And then he's lost 22 times and been stopped 17 times. And judging by the way he looks there, he can't be too dissimilar in age to Oliver McCall, who's 61 now, I think. Oliver McCall. He's a bit older than Mike Tyson. There you go. Oliver McCall can't leave it alone. Mercifully, this is only a 4-rounder. In fact, you guys remember Razor Ruddock? Did he fight James Toney? Is my mind deceiving me? Razor Ruddock definitely fought within the last couple years. I want to say it was against James Toney. You guys correct me if in the chat if I'm buzzing here. He did fight James Toney, didn't he? And that was an absolute car crash. Oh, that was a shocker. Thank you, G-Man. Yes, he did. Did you see that fight? God, that fight was crazy. To see the senior citizen, Razor Ruddock, moving around the ring like he needed a walking stick. That was a madness. James Toney didn't look as bad. He's still got some fluidity in his body, James Toney, but Razor Ruddock looked crazy in there. Full on pensioner body. Mad. Like loose skin everywhere. It just looked crazy. Yes, that's correct. Gorguga. Yeah, Buster Douglas beat McCall too. Yeah, he beat McCall right before, or very soon before he fought Tyson, because McCall actually said that, because he was a sparring partner for Mike Tyson when he fought Buster Douglas. When McCall fought Buster Douglas, he was sparring Tyson at the time. And he said when he went back to training camp and Tyson saw him again, Tyson was actually teasing him. He was making fun of him because he lost to Buster Douglas. He was like, "Oh, you lost to Buster." Yeah, that's what he was saying to Buster Douglas when McCall got back to the gym. Tyson was ripping him for losing to Douglas. And McCall said to Tyson kind of calmly, this is, all according to Oliver McCall, he was like, "Yeah, whatever." Tried to brush off Tyson's mocking. And he said, "Listen, Douglas is tougher than you think he is." And Mike was just trolling him and laughing at him. Shout out to Charles B in the chat. He says they should make an over 50s league. You reckon that will get a lot of viewers? Because we live in a weird world today, folks. I saw, you know, when you're scrolling through Instagram, they show you the most bizarre stuff. And when I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw like medieval fights now where people put like medieval body armor on and they get in a ring or in a cage, like MMA or boxing, and they fight with swords. I mean, it's bizarre, right? That's where we're at now. Most of them type of things happen in Eastern Europe. I think it's like Poland and Russia is where they go for the really bizarre stuff. Yeah, they got these like medieval fights now. Very strange. I've also seen, you know, midgets, but that's kind of old hat now. We've seen plenty of midgets fight. But I've also seen a number of videos on Instagram where you got like 2 women fighting a man. You know, just bizarre things that they're doing now. Another one, which I think was in Russia, they had fighting in a phone booth. Literally in a phone, 2 guys in a phone booth. And when they say go, they both have to punch each other up. And the fights last a matter of seconds a lot of the time. Someone gets slept, gets knocked out quick. I mean, it's just madness. Something that Scream said the slap did not look fake. I've got some seafront property to sell you in Birmingham if you're interested. If you didn't think that slap looked fake. Seafront property in Birmingham. Hit me up in the DMs. What else have I seen? Obviously, there's the slap thing. You know, the slap championships. That isn't Dana White involved in that or something? That's crazy. But they slap each other across the face and their faces all swell up massive. They're real slaps. You know the slap championships? Man's face is all swole up like a balloon. It's a madness. People get knocked out from real slaps. Crazy. So, yeah, all of those bizarre sports that are going on, combat sports, mainly out in Eastern Europe. Yeah, perhaps they could do. What the F is going on here? All right, my YouTube page went crazy there. Can you guys still hear me? Let me know in the chat if you can still hear me, because something timed out on this YouTube on my browser. You guys still hear me? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so these crazy fight leagues that they got. What will they think up next? Maybe you could have a senior citizens league. And in fact, finally, I'm going to talk about something that somebody brought up in my Element group. And by the way, I'm going to open the books. I sound like a mafia don here now. I'm going to open the books and let people, without signing up to my Patreon, into some of my Element group rooms. Okay, one of them in particular that I want to let people into is my trading and investment room. Because, you know, I've got a trading and investment room in my Element group, and most of the guys in there are crypto guys, the guys who are into trading and investment. They're mostly crypto guys, and crypto's all well and good. I like to learn about crypto. I do own some crypto. I'm not a crypto expert by any means. But I'd like to get more guys in the trading and investment room who are into stocks and shares and stuff like that. Hedge funds and whatever. Yeah, I'd like to get more of those in there, because at the moment it's just like pure crypto guys. So hold tight for that shortly. I'll give details of how any of you can just join my Element trading and investment group. Those of you who like to talk about that kind of stuff and converse with others and share tips and what have you. But anyway, there was somebody in the boxing room in my Element group who posted a screenshot from a conversation on, I think it was the BoxRec forum. It was either BoxRec forum or Boxing Scene forum. And it was somebody who claimed to have known and sparred John Fury back in the days, back in John Fury's heyday, I'm assuming. And he told all these stories about John Fury in sparring, which sound plausible to me. You know, we all know John Fury's behavior these days, right? And he claimed that the Fury's real name is not Fury, it's actually Partridge. Yeah? So it'd be John Partridge, Tyson Partridge, and so on. Okay, that's according to the guy on this forum, their actual family name is Partridge, not Fury. Now, it sounds funny because I just think of Alan Partridge. Knowing me, knowing you, and all that. Luke Partridge, thank you. Not even Tyson, right? Luke Partridge. It sounds funny, but I'd heard years ago, and I mean, it might have been a decade ago, that the Furies are not really travelers. I'd heard this several times. Now, again, you're going to say that's nonsense because they obviously were living among other travelers. They've been co-signed by travelers and so on. Yes, but in terms of their family lineage, I'd heard that they're not actually travelers going back many, many generations. They've married into the traveling community. That's what I'd heard. And something that kind of backs this up is the fact that Tyson Fury was on the Irish national amateur team for a brief period, but he eventually got kicked off the Irish national, slurring my words here, the Irish national amateur team, because he couldn't prove that he actually had Irish lineage. You guys know that? Look it up. It's even on his Wikipedia page. He wasn't born in as far as I'm aware, G-Man can correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I'm aware, in order to fight for the Irish national team, you have to either be born in Ireland or you have to have a parent or a grandparent that was born in Ireland. That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tyson Fury couldn't prove any of those things. And that's why they kicked him off the team. Now, in all fairness, travelers of the older generations often didn't have birth certificates. Okay, I know that, to be fair. But in knowing that, if you were someone who's not a traveler but just wanted to make out as though you were one, you could just say, well, yeah, I was born in Ireland, but I don't have a birth certificate, because it was commonplace then in the older generations for many travelers not to have birth certificates. So you could, dupe people into thinking you were a traveler when they asked, where were you born? Oh, I was born in Ireland. You got proof? Oh, no, of course. Of course not. Right? Loads of us don't have birth certificates. So, again, I don't know whether it's genuinely true that they don't have Irish lineage, but again, Tyson Fury was kicked off the Irish national team because he couldn't prove his Irish lineage. Look it up. Look it up. PGMC says his mom is from Belfast. Can he prove it? That she was born there? G-Man says, same with football team. If you have an Irish parent or grandparent, you can compete for Ireland. Northern Ireland still counts as Ireland, hence Colframpton and Conlon being part of the island, our team Ireland. Thank you for the info. First round boxing says, accidentally deleted my own comment, Hatman, even though Calzaghe will probably beat Froch. Can we admit Froch has a much better record? Sorry for the off topic, I'm late. Does Froch have a much better record than Calzaghe? Calzaghe beat Eubank. He beat Kessler in his prime. He beat Bernard Hopkins. He beat Roy Jones. And Hopkins went on to achieve great things after Calzaghe beat him. So no, I have to disagree. I think Calzaghe had the better record, better resume than Froch. Froch beat Kessler, a much older version and a more jaded version of Kessler than Calzaghe beat. And he lost to Kessler the first time. He beat Andre Durrell in inverted commas. Many people think he was lucky to get the decision there. He beat Jean Pascal. But again, Calzaghe's win over Hopkins is better than Froch's win over Pascal. Hopkins, after he lost to Calzaghe, beat Pascal. So now I got to disagree. I think Calzaghe had the better record. KJB says, who would you like to see Chisora fight next? Well, they're talking about Miller. I'd personally like to see him fight Dylan White next. Try to get a win over Dylan White. I think that should be the way he goes. G-Man says there's a famous singer in Ireland called Finbar Fury. He has a famous video on YouTube with 22 million views. It claims he's cousins of the Furies, but I can't remember the full story behind it. Oh, you believe it's disputed? Okay. Again, if Tyson Fury can prove he's got Irish lineage, then why did he get booted off the Irish national team? Because on his Wikipedia page, it says he couldn't prove that he was born in Ireland, and presumably also he couldn't prove he had an Irish-born parent or an Irish-born grandparent. So are the Furies really English partridges who, for whatever reason, you know, wanted to assume the identity of travelers? Some people do, you know. Some people do want to be travelers. They start hanging around with them. They get to know their way of life and their, obviously, fighting culture. And they want to be one of them. It happens. Ocean Blue says, always been game, the partridges. Yeah, that gets that definitely gets a laugh. Matt says White's speech recently has gone downhill. Well, he's always been the guy that talks out the side of his mouth like so many old school Jamaicans, you know, talk out the side of their mouth. But yeah, his speech is not going to get better, is it? After all the sparring wars he's had and times he's been knocked out in the ring and big punches he's taken, it's definitely not going to get better. It's surely going to deteriorate. A shout out to George for the super chat. He says, the fight that almost happened, Bradley versus Khan. Yeah, Bradley ducked that fight. But I want to clarify what I've always said about ducking, because people have different definitions of what ducking means. When I say someone ducked a fight, I'm simply saying that they didn't take it when they could have, when it was a, you know, perfectly good fight to take. At the time, Bradley fighting Khan would have been a unification. And Bradley made out as though he wanted to take that fight. He didn't take it. I don't think because he was afraid of Khan. I think he didn't take it because he had a managerial or promotional dispute at the time. And he didn't want to go ahead with that fight and maybe not get the kind of money that he thought he deserved because his management team or promotional team were, you know, trying to F him over from his perspective. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, Bradley didn't take the fight. But, you know, that fight didn't happen and it had nothing to do with Amir Khan. It weren't Khan's fault. Khan was up for it. Khan was ready for it. But Bradley, he didn't go ahead with it. He had other things going on. So he ducked the fight. You could say he ducked it for financial reasons because of stuff that was going on in his career, but he still ducked it. A duck is a duck. Swaggins, shout out for the super chat. He says, okay, he's talking to somebody else there. I'll let him address them directly. Because what brand of crack are you smoking? Okay, Ayed says Shane McGuigan basically said Malik Scott talk wild and nothing and is lucky to have a job. I wouldn't say that he's taught wild and nothing, but I would say that what he's taught wilder hasn't worked. Yeah, that's what I'll say. I do think he's taught wilder things, but they just haven't worked. Stefan says, why don't you appear on your channel? Because I enjoy my privacy. I travel a lot. I go to a lot of places. And am I antisocial? I don't think I'm antisocial, but I just enjoy my privacy. I don't like being recognized wherever I go and people want to come and chat and this and that. I'm not really that much of a people person. Truth be told, not to that extent where, you know, wherever I go, because way back in the days, I actually did appear on my channel. And, you know, everywhere I go, people want to have conversations. And this is when my channel was far, far smaller. When I was like, okay, this is annoying. I'm in the gym working out. Somebody, oh my God, yeah, watch your channel, this and that, blah, blah. Okay, cool. You know, I'm one of them people when I go to the gym, I don't talk to nobody or have a very, very few conversations. I go there to work. I don't go there as a social club. Some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. I go there to do serious work. I don't go there to have a chin wag. Even now, I'm way past the age of competing. I still have that mentality because now it's about staying in shape and it's about being ready in case I have to let them widowmakers go. Even my old age, you know, somebody might rock up and try something stupid. So I still want to be sharp enough to deal with the average donut. There you go. Shout out to Charles B for the super chat. Big up the Patreon crew. Big up Charles B every time. David Lundberg says, is Trump good for America? I talk about that on my Patreon. I don't like politics. I talk about it, yes, and I give my views on it. But I don't believe in any politicians at all. None of them. I think they're all controlled by somebody. Not necessarily all by the same groups, but they've all got handlers. And I think people put too much faith in politicians. Do I prefer Trump's rhetoric over Harris's rhetoric or Biden's? For the most part, yes. They're rhetoric, but that's what it is. It's rhetoric. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to be cynical about politicians because every election cycle, they've got a new hero. I've seen enough heroes in my life to come to the conclusion that there are no heroes in politics. So don't look for them. The only hero that you need is yourself. Yeah, the politicians ain't going to fix your life. You have to fix it. That's what I'll say about it. The rest I'll talk more about on Patreon. I have talked about Patreon all the time. You know, these kind of things. I'm not a fan of politics or politicians. Don't like them. Exactly. Exactly what KJB said there. It's scumbags versus bigger scum. That's exactly what it is. It's like, pick your poison. Pick the lesser of two evils. You know, I just don't like the political class at all. They're just so dishonest, you know? I don't like them. Shout out to George for the super chat. He says, are you interested in the undisputed boxing game? P.S. Still mad at Haney for not being in the game because he wasn't going to be on the cover. Really? Haney pulled out of the game because he weren't going to be on the... Wow. What a diva move. I never realized Haney did that. Oh my God. He didn't participate because he weren't going to be on the cover. Oh my God. This guy needs to come to the ring in a skirt next time. What? Unbelievable. The diva-ishness is just too much, man. If that's true anyway, that's crazy. But as far as the Undisputed game, believe it or not, I don't like boxing games. I liked a couple of boxing games back in the 90s. One of them was called Evander Holyfield Boxing. And nobody can convince me that I wasn't the world's greatest Evander Holyfield boxing player. That was a game that came out on the Genesis, as it's called in America and other territories. In the UK, it's called the Mega Drive. So I liked Evander Holyfield boxing, and I played that to death. I also played Muhammad Ali boxing. I wasn't as good as that. I wasn't as good at that as I was at Evander Holyfield boxing, but I liked that too. I remember, what was that one with Afro Thunder? That was like a cartoonish boxing game. I think it was on a PlayStation 1, was it? What was that one called? With that character, Afro Thunder. It was like a cartoony type boxing game. Any PS1 guys in the house? Anyone that old here? Was it Ready to Rumble? Was that what it was? Yeah. Ready to Rumble. I played that a little bit. And there was also on the PS2 a game called Mike Tyson Boxing. And I didn't mind that. I was never heavily into it, but I didn't mind Mike Tyson Boxing on the PS2. Other than that, I've never liked any boxing games. I never liked Fight Night at all. And my biggest gripe with Fight Night and with Undisputed is that the characters are too robotic. It just irritates me. The punches are too slow. There's no fluidity in the movement. It's just, I don't like it. There's no fluidity there. And I don't understand it because, you know, Fight Night was made by EA, who also make basketball and football games. And in those games, the characters move like real life human beings. Proper fluidity and everything. But with boxing games, for some reason, that they're all like robotic and stiff. I just don't like it. So yeah, I haven't been a fan of boxing games for what, 20 years? And Fight Night looks the same to me. I've seen footage of it on YouTube and yeah, not a fan. Shout out to George again for the super chat. He says, there's an interview, Haney straight up says it. Oh my gosh. Well then, Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez deserve each other, and Tank. Because they're all carrying on like a bunch of yeah, like a bunch of entitled That's how they're all behaving. They deserve each other. Charles B says, look at Overhand Interactive. It looks much better than Undisputed. Okay, I'll check that out. In fact, let me look it up now. Overhand Interactive. Look that up. Okay, let me play this here. Let's see what this is saying. It's a little 43 seconds. Okay, this is pre-alpha footage. Well, it certainly looks faster than Fight Night or Undisputed. It definitely looks faster. It's still not as fluid as I would want to see it, but yeah, I can see what you're saying. It definitely looks more fluid than Fight Night, and the punches are coming out faster. And that's one of the things that really annoys me about Fight Night and Undisputed, is how slow the punches are and how slow the movement is. It's just, you know, maybe it's because I've actually boxed, and when you've boxed and you know how it feels to go in there and how fast you can do things, playing a game where it's all robotic like that, it's just not fun. At least not to me. I prefer to go in there and, you know, spar myself rather than play that game. Whereas with football games, it much more accurately replicates what football's like in terms of the fluidity of movement and the speed and all that kind of stuff. Not to say that you still wouldn't rather play a game of football than play FIFA or whatever, although some people might prefer to play FIFA if they're really bad. Can't be worse than me at football, though. I think I'm definitely one of the worst football players in history, probably. Actually, I think Dylan White is probably worse than me at football. But yeah, I was always terrible. Terrible at football. Embarrassing. Shout out to Bobs for the super chat. He says, big fan. When do you believe the current heavyweight era began? Klitschko Fury or Stavern Wilder? I want to say Klitschko Fury because Stavern Wilder wasn't really that meaningful, especially in retrospect. So I have to say the new era started with Fury beating Klitschko. Yeah. That's when a new era, well, a new era was going to come anyway because of the fighters who were emerging. But the one who cleaned out the old era was Tyson Fury in terms of he took down the biggest, he took down the king. He took down the biggest piece on the board, the queen even, in Vladimir Klitschko. Stavern beat Areola for a belt that Vitaly Klitschko vacated. And then Deontay Wilder beat Stavern, who just, won the vacant belt. And that was a rematch, by the way. Stavern Areola 2 was for the vacant Vitaly belt. It might have been an immediate rematch as well, wasn't it? Stats Killer says, Tommy Fury is worse than you. Jimbo Jones says, Dylan White on Soccer AM was Joe. Yeah, that's why I think Dylan White's worse than me at football. Because that was, that was crazy. Dylan White on Soccer AM was insane. Talk about 2 left feet. He might be the only person I've seen that's worse than me at football. Because that was terrible. I can assure you of that. In secondary school, there's nothing worse than a guy who's terrible at football, but he's a big guy and people don't want to say no. And he comes on and he wants to try to play football all the time. Unfortunately, I was that guy. The other kids are looking at me like, shaking their head, but they didn't want to say nothing. I'm embarrassed looking back, because I was so terrible. But yeah, the new era started. It was going to happen anyway, but Fury took down the biggest piece on the chessboard, which was Vladimir Klitschko. And he ushered in, that's the way to say, he ushered in the new era with that win. Now, obviously, Anthony Joshua played his part in the new era because although Fury did the taking down of Klitschko, he didn't have the support. He wasn't bringing in the interest back to the heavyweight division. AJ was the guy who did that because he had the Olympic gold medal, because he had Matchroom behind him, because he had the Sky Machine behind him, because he was marketable in a mainstream corporate kind of way. Loads of girls liked him and all that kind of thing. And, that really helped Anthony Joshua early on in his career, by the way, is how popular he was with females. Yeah. And that just shows you how, maybe the nature of females, isn't it? Because once AJ started getting knocked out, it's like AJ's female support dropped right off. It's like after the Ruiz fight. Because, you know, AJ was the first boxer that I can remember where, you know, I'd be meeting up with girls and whatever, and they'd talk about AJ. And I was like, huh? Since when did girls like boxing like that? You know, just average girls who are not like dedicated boxing fans, just, you know. When did they start knowing about, you know, who champions were fighting and all this kind of thing? He's the first fighter I can remember that was that popular with girls. And after he got knocked out by Ruiz, I spoke to several girls and they were like, oh AJ's he's a one-hit wonder. Gillian says, where's his comment gone? Women just watch sport if there's a man they fancy. Pretty much. Pretty much. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Yeah, a lot. Maybe the majority of them. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. Matt says AJ was the biggest thing we've seen in the UK since Beckham. Yeah, and like I say, AJ played his part, and the machine around AJ played their part in revitalizing not only British boxing, but the heavyweight division globally. They played a major part in that. Yeah, AJ wasn't the one who went and beat Klitschko in Germany. That was Tyson Fury. But AJ brought the public interest back into it. Even if Tyson Fury did the heavy lifting initially. AJ and Matchroom, Eddie Hearn. You know, Eddie Hearn, as much as I've criticized him, and there are plenty of things to criticize him for, Eddie Hearn was ahead of his time. Or maybe that's not the right way to describe it. Maybe Eddie Hearn was of his time, right? Eddie Hearn was tapped into the zeitgeist of the day when Frank Warren was a bit out of touch. Because when Eddie Hearn emerged on the scene, he was participating on social media and he made himself accessible to the public. This is something that Frank Warren never was. Frank Warren was never an accessible promoter. This guy was very aloof, you know? Eddie Hearn started giving press credentials to YouTubers, people that were not with any newspaper or anything like that, just a guy with an iPhone turning up to a press conference or a little camcorder. Eddie Hearn's the guy who started doing that. Frank Warren weren't doing that. You had to be from one of the mainstream rags or one of the, you know, major broadcasters to get press credits for a Frank Warren show. Eddie Hearn started letting anyone in, and he started interacting with people on social media, Twitter. Frank Warren, funny enough, back then, he was actually mocking Eddie Hearn. He was actually like ridiculing him for having a Twitter account and, you know, always being on Twitter. Frank Warren didn't get it. Yeah. He was too old school, stuck in his ways and all that. And that's one of the things that allowed Eddie Hearn to revitalize British boxing. Because he was younger, he understood that there was a market there you could tap into. And he did very well with the prize fighter events. You guys remember that? When Eddie Hearn was doing prize fighter. So he did very well with that. He started off with a relatively small budget on Sky. Yes, he did have an exclusive deal, but he had a relatively small budget. And he just worked his way and he understood the market and he brought a new type of crowd into boxing. Because initially he was kind of courting the hardcore boxing crowd to some extent. You know, he was bringing over old champions from back in the days like James Toney to participate in prize fighter events, and Audley Harrison a number of times, obviously. And they were very popular, your call shows and what have you. But then, of course, with Carl Froch played his part. Carl Froch was a massive benefit to Matchroom. There's no question about it. But they both benefited each other. You know, Eddie Hearn did loads for Carl Froch in terms of raising his profile, because previously Froch was unknown. Yeah, when he was with Mick Hennessy, yeah, they were fighting on terrestrial television, but somehow nobody knew Carl Froch. Eddie Hearn definitely helped to raise Cole Fletcher's profile. And they worked very well together, those two, during those years. And obviously it culminated with the George Groves fights. And that was really lift-off for Matchroom. Yeah, lift-off for Matchroom was the Froch-Groves rivalry. That's when Eddie Hearn really started to skyrocket. And Anthony Joshua then stepped on that platform and they went to the stars in terms of popularity and what have you. Adrian says, I want Hatman to do a watch-along sometimes, especially on the big fights. I have done several watch-alongs. The last watch-along I did didn't last very long. That's the problem. The last watch-along I did was it Johnny Fisher, Alan Babich? That was on my live streaming channel, on the other channel. That was quite funny. It was over before it started. KJB says, AJ still has a better resume than Fury. Fury would have unbelievable performance in a pretty Mayweather-esque career. AJ fought everyone for years and paid the price just like the greats before him. AJ's definitely got a deeper resume than Fury. Certainly a deeper resume, but you could argue that Fury has the better standout performances. What I'll say about Fury is that he is a better big occasion fighter than AJ is. Yeah, when the pressure's on and you need to perform out of your skin and you're in real danger, Fury tends to perform better in those situations. I think he's just psychologically more built for that type of pressure than AJ is. Yeah. AJ held it together as well as he could. But ultimately, I think it was a bit much for him. You know, they say that a lot of the greatest fighters are a bit crazy. That might be true. AJ's not crazy, is he? He's like an overthinker and a bit robotic minded. So, no, AJ did very, very well. He's got a deep resume, you know, full of a lot of names. And he had, what was it, 10 world title fights? Maybe more than that if you include Dubois. So he had a deeper resume than Fury, but you could argue that Fury had, you know, better single performances, you know, more memorable standout performances than AJ did. Yeah, iconic moments, yeah. Yeah, Fury had more iconic moments than AJ, for sure, in the ring. Jackie Boy Johnson says, can Johnny Fisher become as popular as AJ? I seriously doubt it. The reason I say that is because I just don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's good enough. Okay, somebody says that David Benavidez versus David Morrell, February 1st on BoxRec. Yeah, they've been talking for the past few weeks about that fight happening. And so it does seem to be coming together, which is good. It's a fight that I look forward to. KJB says the psychological downfall of AJ needs to be studied. At one point, the pressure he had on him was massive and he held it together for a long time, but it all came crashing down. But that's the thing about AJ. He held it together, but he didn't really. You see, some fighters actually perform better under pressure. The pressure gives them more energy. It gives them more sharpness. It allows them to elevate their game. Whereas with Anthony Joshua, I don't think the pressure ever elevated his game. I think the pressure always hindered his game. AJ's better when there's less pressure on him, I think. And when there's more pressure on him, he gets shaky. Whereas with a guy like Tyson Fury, the more pressure that's on him, the better he performs. With Tyson Fury, if you're going to get a bad performance, is when he's not under pressure. You know, that's when he's going to slip up. That's how Lennox Lewis was. When Lennox Lewis was under pressure, he performed great. When Lewis wasn't under pressure, that's when he got beat. Yeah, when he got knocked out by Oliver McCall, he thought that fight was going to be a walk in the park. Same as with the Rackman fight. He thought that was going to be a walk in the park. Didn't take those fights seriously. Got himself chinned. But when he came back in the rematch with Rackman in particular, when the pressure was on, cleaned the guy out. That's how Lewis was. And Tyson Fury, you know, very much that way. Maybe even more so than Lewis. Yeah, Tyson Fury is a real good big event fighter. Real good big event. And even though he lost to Usyk, that's the best version of Tyson Fury that I've seen for years. The version who lost to Usyk. He came in the lightest he'd been for 5 years. He was moving better than I'd seen him for years. He was sharper than I'd seen him for years, at least offensively. So he turns it up when the pressure's on. Shout out to Charles B. Big up. KJB says, you first saw it in the Klitschko fight. You looked so anxious. Yes. AJ looked mad anxious against Klitschko. He looked terrified in the early rounds. He rolled the dice in the fifth is what he did. Because he was getting outboxed, and it was only a matter of time before that big right hand was going to land. And it landed a few times, but not with full power in the early rounds. And he was getting outboxed by Klitschko. In that fifth, he rolled the dice because he had to change up something. Because the way the fight was going, it weren't going to end well. Whereas Fury, when he fought Klitschko in Germany, I'm sure he felt the nerves, but the nerves elevated his performance. You know, Fury was cocky, he was defiant. Look at Fury's face when he was in the ring against Klitschko compared to AJ's face. AJ was, you know, eyes the size of saucers, looking scared, whereas Fury was like sneering at him, taunting him. Different personality. Yeah, so much of success in boxing at the highest levels is about your personality. Maybe even more so than your physical ability. It's about what kind of internal constitution you have. When you look at Alexander Usyk, he's like the archetypal Eastern European fighter. They had hundreds of amateur fights. They fought all over the world. The competition in the old Eastern Bloc, in the old Soviet Eastern Bloc, was incredibly tough. And culturally, those people are stoic. In many of those Eastern Bloc countries, they're very stoic. They don't show their emotions generally that much. And they had the Soviet regiment still about them, even after the Iron Curtain fell. And obviously there's a combination of experience that Usyk had, along with his personality and so on. And like so many of the Eastern European fighters, he's just incredibly consistent, just on an even keel. I'm sure that he is a big event fighter. Evidently, he is a big event fighter. He, in particular, seems to like fighting away from home. Obviously, he hasn't had the option of fighting in his home country for the most part, but in hostile territory, doesn't seem to bother Usyk at all, does it? Maybe it helps him when there's loads of people booing him that don't want him to win. But he just goes out there and smashes people to bits in their backyard, takes the money and says, thank you very much. On to the next one. Like, emotionally, Usyk is, he's reliable, isn't he, emotionally? Just a very reliable guy. And there is emotion there, don't get it twisted. He's a religious man. He will always cross himself. And that's not something, by the way, I know this is a narrative that the Furies tried to run with after Fury lost to Usyk, that Fury was constantly, Usyk was constantly crossing himself because it was such a tough fight. Usyk was constantly crossing himself when he fought Chad Witherspoon. Go and watch that fight. Usyk, before the opening bell, he's looking up at the ceiling and he's crossing himself. And before and after every round, he's crossing himself. That's just what he does. So he's definitely a religious, spiritual man. But whatever he's doing psychologically is evidently working for him, and it's been working for years. Amateurs, WSB, cruiserweight, heavyweight, is working. Yeah, it's kind of like Holyfield, KJB. Holyfield was very similar to that. Yeah, Holyfield found great strength in his faith. And even though Holyfield was kind of a quiet, unassuming character, he was taking on loudmouth guys from the toughest ghettos like Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe. Even in the amateurs, he fought a guy called Ricky Womack, who was a real tough ghetto, thug type guy. And Holyfield, this, softly spoken, poorly educated country bumpkin, was going up against all these tough guys from the inner city, and he was beating them. And all Holyfield would talk about is Jesus and his mum. His mama. You can't ask Holyfield anything about boxing without him answering something to do with his mum. Well, my mama said this. Yeah. The ultimate mama's boy. But it worked. Yeah. Holyfield had his Jesus and he had his mum, and it worked well for him. It might seem a little odd to some, but if it works, it works. His mum was his rock, as was Lennox Lewis's mum. Lewis was a mama's boy too. And some of his opponents used to rib him for it, take the mick, but it worked for him. So you can't knock it if it's working. Black Dynamite says the Waterboy movie had to have been inspired by Holyfield. Yeah, television is the devil, Bobby Boucher. Wasn't that the same woman that was in Misery? Or is it a different woman? Maybe it was a different woman. There's a horrible scene in that movie, Misery, where the woman breaks the guy's foot with a hammer. That's horrible. That crazy old heifer. Any of you guys know what I'm talking about? That movie Misery? That crazy old heifer who basically kidnaps that guy. That's a horrible scene. She breaks his ankle. A shout out to Ricky Torres for the super chat. Kathy Bates, thank you. That's the name, Kathy Bates. Shout out to Ricky Torres for the super chat. He says, Bricktop not happy Chris said to TV reporter, if you repeat what he said, I'll sue you. Mike beat up Frank in a hotel. Unpaid jewelry for the Savarese fight. Yeah. Yeah, the Chris Eubank thing. I'm not sure what's going on with that, whether Chris is going to get sued again. Chris was, it's not really a good idea to say stuff like that to Frank Warren. Because he's got a very, very strong track record in legal cases. And he's got deep pockets. So, not sure what's going on with Eubank Jr., why he was so tetchy that day. Frank Warren says it was all contrived and Ben Shalom was in on it. Is Eubank foolish enough to say something potentially defamatory like that and get himself sued? He's already been sued by Frank Warren before successfully. So, I don't know. Strange one, but it was funny when Eubank Jr. said that. And yeah, Mike Tyson and Frank Warren. Frank Warren likes to brag about the fact he got the money out of Mike Tyson for that situation. Mike Tyson punched him up in a hotel room. Frank Warren refused to talk about that for years, by the way. He completely refused to talk about that. But it was only a couple years ago. He might have published a book a couple years ago. And that's when he admitted that Mike Tyson did chin him in a hotel room and give him that black eye. Because he turned up to the Tyson Savarese fight with a black eye. And a grumpy look on his face. Tyson hit him with a left hook or whatever it was. Which is a crazy thing, right? And again, that just shows how wild Mike Tyson was. He was making trips over to the UK, doing shows with Frank Warren and chinning the promoter in his own country. Like, think about how wild he was. Yeah, Mike Tyson was out of control at that stage of his career. And the people that he had around him didn't help because they perpetuated that type of energy. He had a bunch of like gangsters and street guys around him. So he was influenced by, you know, their mindset, their code, you know, such as it was. Obviously, Mike Tyson was from that environment himself. But when he was in that environment in Brownsville growing up, he got arrested like 30 odd times by the age of 12. So not a good idea to keep him around those kind of people, really, is it? Obviously, he's his own man. He does his own thing. Geryon says Warren must be pretty tough to take a shot from Tyson. Well, Frank Warren's obviously not a fighter in the physical sense, but psychologically, he's extremely tough. There's no question about it. Frank Warren is as tough as nails. I mean, the first time I heard about when he got shot, exactly, somebody mentioned it there, Marley. Frank Warren got shot and he nearly died. And he was laid up in hospital, and all he was thinking about was getting back to work as soon as possible because he didn't want his rivals to get a head start on him or whatever. So he actually left hospital prematurely when the doctors and everyone said he shouldn't leave. That's how tough Frank Warren is. So he's a very, very mentally tough man, and he's extremely fiery and driven. Yeah, to the point where, I mean, that's why he's so spiteful, because he's got this fire in him, Frank Warren. He's very formidable in terms of business, you know, certainly legally. Although, funny enough, Frank Warren doesn't appear to have gotten the upside against Anthony Yard and Tunde Ajayi, does he? We're not privy to the contract and exactly what was on it, but they maintained all along that they were free agents. And they're still saying the same thing. And Frank Warren isn't so bullish about the situation now. You guys notice that whenever he talks about, he's not as bullish as he was in the initial stages. So very interesting. I'd like to know more about it because, Frank Warren has mostly a winning record. He has been defeated a couple times legally, but for the most part, he gets the W. He's very formidable. Shout out to Swaggins. He says, those pants Tyson had on, the Jake Paul presser, were very suspect. Yeah, Mike Tyson's done that many times. He used to like to come out in underpants like that. For many of his weigh-ins, he would do that. That's quite a common Mike Tyson thing. Now, if you were a smaller fighter, let's say, any fighter below heavyweight where you've got a weight limit to make, then yeah, you might come out in some little underpants like that, little briefs, because you can't afford to have a lot of clothing on you if you're going to make the weight. But as a heavyweight, you don't need to do that because there's no limit. But Mike Tyson used to do it anyway. So for loads of Mike Tyson weigh-ins, he would wear little briefs like that. Little underpants, like Speedos. He's been doing that for years. Yeah, Guryon says Tyson prefers Y fronts over boxers. Exactly that. I mean, you'd have to ask him why. And of course, Mike Tyson has said many suspect things over the years. Many, many, many suspect things. Glad Tidings says Duran used to do that. That's why Tyson does it. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Mike Tyson was a massive Roberto Duran fan. He always used to say Roberto Duran was his favorite fighter, and he idolized him. He says he snuck in to watch Roberto Duran bash up Davey Moore way back in the days, before Tyson was famous. He snuck in a fire exit or something and made it in to watch Duran versus Davey Moore. Davey Moore got the absolute stuffing beat out of him in that fight. He was the champion. Did I see that guy who came up to Mike Tyson claiming to have been robbed by him back in the 70s, 80s? Yeah, I saw that. Mike Tyson also, according to a member of the rap crew Wu-Tang Clan, there's a member of the Wu-Tang Clan called U-God. And he says that Mike Tyson, back in the days, robbed his mother. He robbed U-God's mother. He walked up to her in the street and snatched the earrings out of her ears. Like he dragged her by her hair and pulled the earrings out of her ears. Crazy, right? Mike Tyson says he doesn't remember. I mean, that's convenient, but he did so many robberies, like street robberies. Maybe he genuinely doesn't remember because he did so many of them. I remember back in the days, there was a forum. I forget which boxing forum it was, but Mike Tyson's rap sheet was flying around, or what was purported to be Mike Tyson's rap sheet. And according to that, he used to rob old ladies. When he was like 12, 13, he was big then, 190 pounds or something. He was 12, 13. And he used to offer to help old ladies to carry their groceries back to their apartments. And then when he got them into a secluded area, he would knock out the old ladies and then make away with their pocketbook or whatever. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. So to say he was a bad kid, yeah, he was a very bad kid. Knocking out people's grandmas. And then, of course, he progressed to robbing all sorts of other people and, he was a product of his environment to a certain extent. But you have to remember that Mike Tyson's brother, Rodney, is a brain surgeon, and they grew up in the same house, same parents. Look him up, Rodney Tyson. He grew up, same apartment, Brownsville, ghetto. But he's one of the best brain surgeons, last I checked, in America. Rodney Tyson. So yes, there is nature versus nurture, but I would say nature plays a greater role. In most cases. Not in all cases. That's my opinion. KJB says people romanticize Tyson's antics to an absurd degree. This guy has a dark history. None of these fanboys would want to be around this guy in a room while he was doing nose candy, marching powder. 100%. This is what I always say to his fanboys. And a lot of his fanboys are like nerdy type guys, obsessives. I always tell these guys, if you were around Mike Tyson during his heyday, Mike Tyson freely admits he was a megalomaniac. He was a cokehead and he was, you know, a bully. If he was around you at that time, he would have taken your girlfriend, probably run a train on your girlfriend with him and his bodyguards, given you a slap. That's probably what he would have done to a donut. Like these Mike Tyson fanboys. He was a rough man. Gabrielle Calderon says Rodney Tyson is not a brain surgeon. I swear he's some type of surgeon. He's definitely in the medical field at a high level. I swear he was a brain surgeon. Let me look it up now. It was something like that. Okay, so I'm reading here. Maybe this is where I got it from. I'll post this link in the chat. All right. It says Mike Tyson's brother, brain surgeon, saved lives. Hang on. I'll post this in the chat. Make of it what you will. But this is what I've read over the years. This paper is saying he's a brain surgeon. So I don't know. Is it fake news? It's mainstream media. It could be fake news, but that's what I've read over the years, that he's a brain surgeon. Shout out to Ocean Blue. He says, just want to say big up. And I also DM'd you on Element. I'll check your DM after the stream. Big up, Ocean Blue. There's the link. Click the link. It says he's a brain surgeon. So, yeah, I'm not crazy. I didn't make it up. It says he's a brain surgeon right there, Gabrielle. So click the link and read it for yourself. Click the link. You're arguing with me. I'm showing you where I got the information from. Click the link and read it for yourself. The mainstream media are saying he's a brain surgeon. Now, he did grow up in the same house. He did grow up in the same house. I've heard Mike Tyson say that Rodney grew up in the same house. Jackie Boy Johnson says one of the best brain surgeons who doesn't even have a picture up. He does have a picture. I posted it in the chat. I say he doesn't have a picture. Posted it in the chat right there. It says here, Mike Tyson revealed his brother is a brain surgeon. So they're quoting Mike Tyson himself in the link I just put up. Mike Tyson revealed his brother is a brain surgeon who saved a couple of his friends' lives after they were shot. I'm not making it up. So if this newspaper is wrong and they're putting out false information and they're misquoting Mike Tyson, or if Tyson was, because they're quoting from Mike Tyson himself, take the issue up with them. All I'm telling you is I'm not making it. I didn't make up this idea that his brother's a brain surgeon. That's been reported in the mainstream media, and they're quoting Mike Tyson himself. They're saying he's a brain surgeon. So there you go. Black Dynamite says, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but do you think there was some Diddy activities between Cuss and Young Mike? There was an old guy who, he was some kind of boxing coach. And he made those inferences or allegations about Cuss D'Amato. Must have been about a decade ago. I wish I could remember the guy's name. But there was an old guy, like an old white guy, presumably from the New York area, who knew Cuss and all those kind of people. And he claimed that Cuss and Jimmy Jacobs were down low, you know, fruity. Yeah? That's what he said. And he said that Cuss used to look at the boys in the shower. Whether that's true, I don't know. I don't want to speak ill of the dead either. But that's what this guy was claiming. And he was doing it on YouTube, talking in videos. This old guy making all these claims. Stats Killer says Cuss D'Amato had a wife. If you're talking about Camille Ewald, that was not Cuss D'Amato's wife. That was Cuss D'Amato's brother's wife. His dead brother's wife. So when his brother died, Camille went to live with Cuss. That was his brother's wife. G with the PT said, well, Tyson kissed Jacobs on the lips after Berbick win. Indeed he did. Indeed he did. Indeed he did. Yeah, Ocean Blue, I've got the same suspicions about the... I mean, there was a documentary about Brendan Ingle. And Brendan Ingle and Harold Graham. And there's a scene in that documentary which is so suspect. I mean, that is beyond suspect. It's unreal. I'm actually hesitant to even post the link to that section of the documentary in the chat because it is so Diddy-ish. If you see what Brendan Ingle and Harold Graham were up to in this part of the documentary, oh my days. Talk about baby oil. Harold Graham naked, getting a naked massage. Baby. It's like a Diddy fantasy. Unbelievable. Why would a guy need his buttocks massaged after a workout? You couldn't ask Brendan Ingle because he's not around now, right? But then you see pictures of, on social media of Dominic Ingle, Kell Brook, who, Kell Brook's not even suspect. He's, in my opinion, confirmed. He's not even suspect. He's just full on. Kell Brook, Dominic Ingle, and Kid Galahad going to nudist beaches together. Like, who does that? Which group of friends, guys, say, oh yeah, let's go to a nudist beach together and they'll walk around naked together? If any guy suggested that to me, he won't be my friend no more. I'm just telling you. That's what Dominic Ingle, Kell Brook, and Galahad were doing. It is a weird gym. It is a weird gym. And during that whole Prince Nassim era, they came up with a name for Prince Nassim, Ryan Rhodes. Maybe they included Junior Witter and Johnny Nelson in it as well. And even Pele Reed. They called them the Spice Boys. Any of you guys remember that? When they were calling the Ingle fighters the Spice Boys? That gym is fruity as hell. That's like, that gym is so fruity, it's unbelievable. Huh? I mean, whatever floats your boat, right? But not the kind of gym I'd feel comfortable in. And by the way, you know, Prince Nassim's, you couldn't really call them shirts. He used to wear like a tassel type thing. I guess a lot of fighters wear that these days, but he wore like a pair of shorts which looked like they'd been passed through a paper shredder. Yeah. And it was actually Brendan Ingle who came up with the idea for that. Did you know that? It weren't Prince Nassim. It was Brendan Ingle, because he said to Naz, you need to show more leg. Obviously, he sold it to him by saying, because the girls would like it if you show a bit more leg. That's what Brendan Ingle said. And he got him to, now, not the rug with a hole in it. He wore that for a few fights, but I'm talking about the ones where it looked like a pair of shorts had been passed through a paper shredder. Yeah, where you could see his legs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, Brendan Ingle came up with those. Make of that what you will. I know what I think about it, but make of that what you will. And Gabrielle says, even if Cos were married, he can still bust cheeks. Indeed. Michael Barrymore, anyone? There's plenty of married guys on the down low, you know? Anyway, how did we get to this? Somebody mentioned Diddy, and now I've gone down this road. Let's steer back onto the straight and narrow. Let's steer back onto the straight and narrow. I don't like the direction this conversation is going in here. Emphasis on the straight. Let's get back on the straight path here. Fight Sports Talk, big up Fight Sports Talk every time. Fight Sport Talk, excuse me, over there in New Zealand. Shout out to you, sir. He says, Cos dismissing Atlas, who brought up Mike's inappropriateness with minors, is a major red flag. That is such a good point. Cos was so bloody minded. He was so determined to have his revenge over the boxing industry because he felt like they'd done him over with the involvement of the mob, taking his fighters and all that kind of stuff. He felt like he'd been marginalized. And so he was going to stop at nothing to get his revenge. And that's what it was all about with Cus, it would seem. Mike Tyson was the tool that he would use to get his ultimate revenge over the boxing industry. And no matter what Mike Tyson was doing, and Jose Torres has talked about this, Teddy Atlas obviously has talked about this. No matter how bad Mike Tyson's behavior got, Cus D'Amato was willing to sweep, unless the bad behavior was against Cus. Because at one point, apparently, Cus offered Mike Tyson out. Like he took him outside and said, yeah, I'll fight you. That's what Jose Torres said. He said Mike Tyson laughed it off at the time, but Cus was serious. He was like, I'll fight you. Because Cus was a bit crazy. But yeah, after what Mike allegedly did, and I have to imagine he did do it, or else why apologize to Teddy Atlas? And of course, he could sue Teddy Atlas out of house and home if it weren't true. So for Cus D'Amato to try and sweep that under the rug, fire Teddy Atlas for doing something which, and again, that's the romanticization, isn't it, of Cus D'Amato? Obviously, Teddy Atlas sees D'Amato as a flawed human being, but he still, you know, praises him in terms of the things he learned from him and the opportunities he got from him. But that thing that he did there, siding with Tyson over Teddy, is a shocker. It is a shocker. Obviously, Mike was only a kid himself. I mean, he was built like a man, but he must have been, what, 15? And the girl was like 11? That's still dodgy, right? It's not as dodgy as it would have been if he was a, you know, legal adult, but it's still dodgy. Given the size of Mike Tyson at the time, you know? And yeah, Cuss gave him carte blanche to keep on keeping up with all sorts of terrible behavior. iGolf says Dirty Mike was his school name. It was one of his names, yeah. They also called him Big Head Mike because he had a big head. Big Head Mike and Dirty Mike. Dirty Mike because he was poor, and also Big Head Mike. All right, peeps, I'm going to bring this stream to an end here. Shout out to everybody in the live chat who participated and had this enjoyable conversation. Special shout out to everybody who donated via Super Chat. And I will be back on later this evening, unless plans change. I will be back on later this evening for the fight. Oh, yes, I will. I'll be back on to watch this fight or this farce. Let's see what it turns out to be between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. So catch you guys then. Be good. I'm out.